That has come up because the House Ways and Means Committee wanted to file an amicus brief in this case, and they say that one of Biden's attorneys reached out to the clerk of the court and had them remove a document from the docket. Now, Hunter Biden's team saying that this was a misunderstanding, that there was no misrepresentation, that their lawyer was not saying that she was part of the House team. But this is something that the judge has said she's questioned whether there should be sanctions against Biden's team, and that will also be addressed at the hearing that gets underway in just about an hour. Rahel?
This is a plea agreement. Hunter Biden could walk into that courtroom, into that courthouse very shortly. But for it to go through, the judge has to agree to it.
That's right.
How often does a judge not agree to it?
It's very rare. I also think that whatever they filed, and I understand there's been now a kerfuffle about what happened when somebody called the chambers to deal with this, but papers that were apparently filed by the House Ways and Means Committee may have had information in them that was confidential and that should not have been filed. So I think that just sort of adds to sort of the politicization of this process today.
For the judge not to agree to the plea deal, what would have to happen? I mean, how big of a mix-up would there have to be?
Well, and I don't think it's, the issue that a judge would have to face is, is this a fair and just resolution? Is there some sort of unusual, highly unusual irregularity about the terms of the agreement? And there are just none of those factors that are present here.
All right, just minutes from now, Hunter Biden in federal court expected to plead guilty to tax charges. A judge must agree to that agreement. This is developing now. All right, at this moment, Hunter Biden is inside a federal courthouse where he is expected to plead guilty to 2 federal tax misdemeanors. He arrived just a short time ago.
Now, there's a very, very bizarre little sideshow that happened just in the last 24 hours where the federal judge who's overseeing this, a Trump appointee, by the way, she is very angry, apparently, that a member of Hunter Biden's legal team may have said something that caused a filing by Republicans to be taken down. So we'll expect that that's going to be part of this court hearing as well, John.
Another possibility is if a judge thinks that a plea is simply inadequate. I had one very close call in my career where a judge thought that we as prosecutors were being too lenient with the defendant, and the judge put us through the ringer and made noises like he was not going to accept it. He did ultimately, but the important thing here is the judge has the final say on whether, in this case, she accepts it.
All right, we are getting new information from inside the federal courthouse in Wilmington, Delaware, where Hunter Biden and his team, along with federal prosecutors, are before a federal judge working out this plea agreement where Hunter Biden has agreed to plead guilty to 2 federal misdemeanor tax charges. There's also a deal to resolve a felony gun charge.
One of the things that she asked, this is Judge Mary Ellen Noreika. She is a Trump appointee who's overseeing this hearing. One of the things she asked was whether the Justice Department, whether she could ask them to go back and redo this investigation if there are parts of it that she finds lacking. Both the Justice Department and Hunter Biden's attorneys agreed that she could not do so. The Justice Department pointed out that the way to handle any such issues would be for the political process to take over.
And she was pressing the prosecution on this investigation and the 4 corners of this plea agreement. One of the prosecutors said that the investigation was very much ongoing and that she asked him, well, what is not covered in this plea agreement if you were leaving the possibility for there being other future charges? So then the judge said, would this include a possible FARA charge that's not registering as a foreign agent? The prosecutor said no, the deal would not include that. It was at that point that she had said to the prosecution, if you can charge that, then what does this mean? And the prosecutors, she asked Hunter Biden's attorneys about that, and he said, well, then there's no deal. And the prosecutor said, then there is no deal. So Biden's team said that the plea agreement, as far as they understood it, was now null and void. They were moving ahead to talk about what the next steps would be in this case. So as of right now, the deal appears to be dead and off the table, and it remains to be seen how they're going to move forward. But he has been charged with those 2 misdemeanor tax evasion charges. But one thing we learned is that this investigation is very much still ongoing.
If this falls apart, there is next to no chance that DOJ says, OK, our deal fell apart, no charges for him at all, because, again, they're already on record saying they believe he committed both the tax charge and the gun charge. So there's a very high risk to Hunter Biden if this deal falls apart.
Because the major breaking news is that at least for now, the Hunter Biden plea agreement appears to have fallen apart. No deal in place just yet. Lawyers still working behind the scenes. We have a lot of major developments coming in.
Right now, drama in Delaware. Hunter Biden's plea deal is crumbling inside a courtroom. Prosecutors and defense attorneys are trying to see if they can put it back together.
This doesn't happen ever. I mean, this is just so strange, especially for the two sides to not have a firm agreement about what it is they had agreed to. Obviously, this is a historic thing, right? The son of the sitting president is coming into a federal courthouse and pleading to crimes. So from the beginning, this is just a very unusual day. But certainly what we've seen transpire over the last hour or so is just something out of this world.
Shan, there's no question in the conversations I've had with Hunter Biden's legal team that they were hoping to just plow through this and make it so that the federal investigation, much more broadly than these 2.5 charges, was over. And that clearly, unclear if it was the prosecutors who said, whoa, 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 or the judge looking at it holistically who said, wait a second.
The fact that it's stuck now, the defense can always say, okay, fine, go back to your investigation, go through that lousy laptop and see what you can come up with.
Hey, Dana. So the deal appears to be back on track. After I was just out here, the Biden's team had asked for 10 minutes to speak with the prosecution. They were doing that while the judge was off the bench. Then after a bit of period, they came back, the judge came on and she asked them where they are. So essentially, Biden's team is agreeing to the plea deal, but a much more limited in scope deal.
There has been no evidence that we have seen that bolsters or makes those claims true yet. And when I say those claims about his business dealings, whether there was anything nefarious when he dealt with China and Ukraine, and more importantly, any alleged or potential links to his father. This is history happening right now, which is a sitting president's son is pleading guilty to federal crime misdemeanor on issues of guns, taxes, and related to drugs.
A historic plea deal that nearly unraveled at the last moment. This morning, Hunter Biden pleaded guilty to 2 misdemeanor counts of failing to pay taxes. It was the first time the child of a sitting president pleaded guilty to a federal crime. Now, a hearing like this is usually just a formality, but today the defense threatened to walk away once Justice Department prosecutors indicated that future charges could still be on the table. The two sides huddled and appeared to then refine the scope of the deal. On the political side, we know House Republicans are barreling ahead with their own probe of Hunter Biden based on unverified allegations that Joe Biden was tied to his son's business deals. So far, they've not proved any links.
So there are certain things that perhaps Hunter Biden could still be charged with that are not covered by this agreement, Boris.
Yeah, potentially acting as an unregistered foreign agent for other governments within the United States. They're still in court, so we'll see where things go from there. Evan Perez, please keep us posted. But does it concern you that the son of a former vice president and current president was allegedly on the phone with, for example, a Chinese businessman, or sending text messages, I should say, to a Chinese businessman saying that he's sitting next to his father and that if he doesn't get what he's looking for in terms of a deal, the reverberations are going to be felt. Does that seem ethical to you?
Now, she did apologize to Hunter Biden, telling him, I'm sorry. She understood he wanted to resolve this and was eager to get, as you said, this 5-year-long investigation resolved. But she also said, she wanted to make it very clear that he was pleading guilty under an agreement to terms that he believed to be the case, not something that he could find out was not part of the agreement. So she's doing it in a sense to protect him and to protect this agreement by making sure that he understood it and that it was constitutional. Boris?
Because allegedly there was a miscommunication between Hunter Biden's legal team and a request to take down certain information that was posted to the case docket. How did that come up in court today and break that whole scenario down for us?
I mean, Boris, that's what we thought was going to be a bit of a sideshow today in the hearing. In fact, it didn't even come up at all. The judge was squarely focused on these agreements. But what had happened was yesterday, the chairman of the House Ways and Means Committee asked for permission to file an amicus brief because he wanted the judge to consider, before accepting this plea deal, some of the information that came forward from the IRS whistleblowers who said that they believed that there was political interference in this investigation. Then what came to the judge's attention is that the House Ways and Means Committee's attorney said that this document was taken off the court docket, and they said improperly, because they said one of Hunter Biden's attorneys had contacted the clerk of the court saying that she worked for the House and asked them to take it down. Now, Biden's attorneys were asked by the judge to respond. She said, "Why shouldn't I sanction you for this misrepresentation?" And so Biden's attorney said, "No, that's not what happened. This was a misunderstanding." I expected that to take up some portion of the arguments today, but in fact, it didn't even come up.
Happening now, first-hand accounts from inside the Hunter Biden hearing as plans to finalize his plea deal fell apart and the agreement was put on hold. We begin this hour with all the tension and the drama during Hunter Biden's court hearing today and the surprise twist at the end, his plea deal put on hold.
Well, Wolf, as you said, this plea deal that he came into court today thinking he was going to enter into is now on hold. And the first snag emerged when the judge was questioning the scope of the terms of the deal involving these two tax misdemeanors Biden was set to plead guilty to. The judge questioning prosecutors exactly how limited and how broad this deal was. And when pressed, one of the prosecutors acknowledged that their investigation is still ongoing and that they believe that this deal related only to tax charges, gun charges, and drug charges. Now, she asked Biden's lawyer if that was his understanding. He said it wasn't, and that this is where it became an impasse. Prosecutor said then there is no deal. Hunter Biden's lawyer saying they thought it was null and void. But then they asked the judge for more time to try to work something out. Both sides came back and they were on the same page. So the judge was then moving forward with what would be the guilty plea on these tax evasion charges, but she said she couldn't do it without a further understanding of a diversion on felony gun charge, a gun possession charge. So the judge there now narrowing down on questionings on that. And then she said she thought it was a deal with atypical conditions and she wasn't sure it was constitutional. So she said she could not sign off on that deal today. So Hunter Biden then entered a plea of not guilty to these charges. And that's where it stands right now, Wolf.
Wolf, this was always going to be an unprecedented day in American history. It's never happened before where the son of the sitting president walked into a federal courthouse to admit that he broke the law. But I don't think anyone expected quite what happened. These plea hearings, they can be 15 minutes, 20 minutes. This one dragged on for 3+ hours. And as those minutes ticked away, Hunter Biden appeared anxious at times and he looked worried. And his attorneys in the hallways during some of those breaks were visibly frustrated, with good reason. It was a roller coaster of a day. As Kara explained, the deal was on, the deal was off, it was back on, and then it was finally the judge who pulled the plug at the end, put everything on hold, and she said, "We need to be careful, we need to get this right." As the proceedings wrapped up, Wolf, she addressed Hunter Biden directly, and she said, "I know you wanted to get this done. I'm sorry, but I need more information. We need to get this right." And that's exactly what's going to happen. She ordered the parties in this case to file additional arguments over the next 30 days, explaining why the deal is constitutional and why things should move forward.
Who's at fault for this deal falling apart, at least as of now, based on what we know?
The judge is at fault for calling him out on it.
But there's no question, Wolf, that ultimately the folks at the White House today were hoping that this would be the day when this Hunter Biden matter, at least from a legal perspective, would come to a full and final conclusion. And yet after today, it is clear that not only are Republicans going to continue to investigate this, continue to use this as a political cudgel against the president, but it's also clear that Hunter Biden is not yet out of the woods, even from a legal perspective.
Yeah.
And look, of course, this is not what the White House wanted. The White House wanted this to be a closed chapter, not only because the president loves his son, but also because it's a political headache for them, and now will continue to be a political headache.